Alright, I'm recording this quick video on both resolution and cropping your images in Lightroom because we want to talk more about the environmental portraiting class. So first let me introduce you to this, the pixel, right? Your camera is taking every time it takes a picture, it's taking a bunch of pixels. And what's a pixel? It's basically a dot that's made up of three parts: red, green, and blue, right? RGB, you've probably heard RGB. Your cameras take pictures in what's called the RGB color space. And when we put all of these pixels together in an array, which basically means rows and columns, right, which actually that's a matrix, but right, we get what's called a raster image. So what we are doing is each of these down low at some level, these are all just individual dots of red, green, and blue values that produce then the color that we see, and then eventually becomes, oh, an adorable puppy or whatever it is we're taking pictures of, right? So we need to know that that's a raster image. The other type of graphic file that we can save is a vector image, and what that is a file defined mathematically. Now raster images are better for things like photographs because then you can edit each individual pixel, where with a vector graphic you cannot do that, and it's better for smooth color type graphics. So the big takeaway, why am I telling you all this? The thing that you really need to know is that a raster image cannot be presented bigger than its resolution. And what does it mean, resolution? It basically means how big we can resolve it with our eye, right? So that we see all those dots as one smooth image and not as a bunch of individual dots. And what happens here is it really matters the presentation device that we use. And when we talk about resolution, we're generally talking in DPI or PPI, and they're basically the same thing. If we're going to print something, generally in print, we print things at 300 DPI, which stands for dots per inch. So in your raster image, right there, for every inch of space that you're printing, there would be 300 of those individual dots. Now on screens, generally on regular computers, most regular computers, we're looking at 72 DPI. It takes 72 of those pixels in a row to form 1 inch that we can comfortably resolve. Now we are in the age of Retina screens, where my MacBook Pro is a Retina screen. Probably your iPhone or Pixel or Android or whatever you're using is probably 144 dots per inch, growing closer and closer to print, right? So that's how many dots go inside these before we start seeing the dots or it looks blurry. Now we have two cameras in this class. We have a 70D, and your 70D takes a photograph that is ultimately 5,472 pixels by 3,648 pixels. And if we did the math for how big that we could print one of those at a proper printing resolution of 300 DPI, it means it gives you about 18.25 inches by just a little over 12 inches. The 80D takes pictures at 6,000 pixels by 4,000 pixels. So that gives us 20 inches by 13.25 inches at the proper 300 DPI printing. For this class going forward in these mini essays, I'm going to allow you to crop up to 15% of your image, right, to tighten up your image. And again, the point is you can't go ahead and crop this image 50% or more, or you'll have an image, right, that won't print very big, and we need to print these things usually. I mean, you can show it a little more on the screen. So this is something to be very aware of. So the math on that is for a 70D, you can make it 4,650 pixels by 3,100 pixels, like down to that, and the 80D 5,100 by 3,400. So for that, we need to find a way to see that in Lightroom. So I'm going to mosey over to Lightroom. Let me find it here. There it is, right? And so I'm in my Lightroom, and where do we find this, right? Well, it's a little hard to find this. Let's double click on an image and get us into what's known as the loop view. Like when we're in the library in the grid mode and we look at the image more, where a loop is like a magnifying loop. And we have to go to view options, or you see we can hit Command J and bring up this dialog box. Now we're going to want to click this button right here, Show Info Overlay, and you'll see already as I did it, I have this here. And right, we want to make sure that one of these things is cropped dimensions. It really doesn't matter which one, but by default I think it should automatically put that as the default third one. And so there we'll see our pixels of our image, right? So I'm shooting with a 70D, and so we have it there, right? So that's great. So now we have a way to know how much pixels we have, right? And we have to refer to what our 15 our 15 pixels is, right? So for me on the 70D, because this is how big it is, I can go down this small in my crop. So how do we crop? Well, first we have to get into develop mode, right? So now you've seen me click up here up top. I went to develop mode, and now this is the crop tool right here. It's under your histogram, and I click that, and of course we've seen this, right? And so we need to, I'm going to leave I like to just leave something up here. I'm going to leave that there. And the rule of thirds. And so we want to make sure our aspect is set to original, right? Because we don't want to change our original aspect. Our original aspect is actually a 2 by 3 by 4 by 6, but if we just leave it at original, that will do us great, right? And so all I have to do is come and just, as I crop, right, I can just grab these handles and recrop my image, right? And then I'm paying attention to this right here because I know I don't want to go below, right, 4,650 pixels. So here I am, I've gone a little bit below it, right? Here I'm at 470, right? So here I'd be fine, right? And obviously maybe I don't want to go to the mean, right? And so maybe I say, oh, this is how I want to do it. Now you can rotate it slightly. If you mouse over to the edge, you might want to fix up. You have kind of a wonky line, a line that doesn't line up the way, or you want to add a little more Dutch angle, right? You see if you mouse over kind of the outside edge of this box, you'll go ahead and do that. And now when I double clicked on it, I've pretty much taken the crop. I could also just go to a different tool and it should just show you the crop, right? So that is cropping in Lightroom. Again, you'll have 15% that you can do. Any questions or troubles with it, of course, always come to me.